Good afternoon, everyone. Well, we finally have made it. It's coming up to week one of the NFL season after what feels like an eternity of drought in the offseason. This is We're the Game. I'm Michael. That's Luke. And today we're going to be talking about the Arizona Cardinals heading in to this season. And Luke, I know, has waited a long time to get to this. I got to cheat and go early in the week because my team had the earlier game. But I'm excited to talk about the Cardinals and where they were and where they are and what's going to happen coming up this Sunday. So, without further ado, talking about last season briefly, Cardinals had a good season. They ended 8-9, tough division. They did a lot of things really well. They scored a lot of points. They had a solid defense, and again, in a pretty brutal division in most regards. I think as we look ahead, there's plenty of those close games, especially in their own conference, that they were off by just a hair. What are the things that you kind of feel like were areas you would like to see updated, changed? And then do you think that this offseason the team did things to address those in one way or another, or things that they did that will impact those in one way or another?
A lot of those things, yeah, but some things they didn't do it the way I might have done it. On defense, most people said, we didn't have consistent pass rush, even though we finished middle of the pack in sacks. A lot of that was manufactured through funny blitz packages and disguises and things like that I'm not smart enough to fully understand. But this offseason, they added a bunch of players, Dalvin Tomlinson, they brought back Calais Campbell, they drafted Walter Nolan. Yeah. We're hoping for year two of like Darius Robinson to really be a thing since he won't be injured. Fingers crossed. This year, so much things like that. They brought those in to help. They also brought in Will Johnson in the draft. I shouldn't ignore that one. He's seen as a high-end talent who should start pretty immediately to make an impact. So you're hoping for all those things on the defensive side to take your defense up to the next step, where you're not just feisty, but actually can win some games almost just with your defense. I don't think we're going to challenge the Denver Broncos and Houston Texans of the world, but we should be better than we were. On the offensive side of the ball, you are actually bringing back 10 out of 11 to start with the 11 out of 11th, if that makes any sense. Will Hernandez is on the team, but he won't start the year. He's still coming off an injury, and I believe he's not quite completely ready to go yet. But we actually have 11 starters returning for the offense this year. And so you're hoping – I wanted them to bring in more of a speed receiver. Actually, the guy the Packers drafted, Matt Golden, was a guy that I kind of had my eye on. I thought he scratched the right itch. There was talk of Tyreek Hill, and I know he's getting older, but I was like, right this second, it seems like he would hit the nail right on the head. But they didn't. They decided to just go with continuity and young players maturing into what we hope they'll turn into, like Marvin Harrison Jr. and such. But that's the route they've taken there. So it's, I was kind of talking to you earlier about this. I'm kind of playing both sides here, where I'm hoping that on one side of the coin, we got better because we made the right changes. And then on the other side of the coin, we got better because we didn't make any changes at all. And I'm hoping we benefit from both. And that sounds rather like peak off-season hopium-infused nonsense. But I guess looking at it in reverse, if we're halfway through the season or even at the end of the season and both segments have improved, the offense looks better, the defense looks better, those are the things I'm gonna look to in credit. The offense looks better because they managed to keep the team together, and the defense looks better because they managed to bring in the right leadership, the right players to fill in the right gaps. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. And as for the offseason, I think that kind of sums it up for me.
Sure.
So it was fun though. I enjoyed the offseason.
Well, and I appreciate what you were talking about there with the organizations look at problems over people, I think, and then they look to say, hey, can we address that problem internally, or do we need to address it out externally? And it seems like on defense they said, hey, we're going to need to address a lot of this externally, not a lot, some of these gap problems externally, and they brought in some vets for that. But like going to your offense, it's such a young offense in many of the skill positions. Looks like they kind of took the opposite approach and said, hey, organizationally, let's keep going from internally. So yeah, and of course I think everyone's excited to see the Marvin Harrison Jr. evolution, whatever that may be, and then see Trey McBride hopefully evolve a little bit in the red zone. Uh, I know those are some areas outside of watching James Conner run, which I really enjoy. So, but that sounds good. So let's take a look at that a little bit more and how all of those things filter into this week as you all head off to face a bit of an intriguing challenge with New Orleans, right? Because New Orleans has a lot of new pieces themselves all over the place, really. They're going to be trying to find their identity. Whereas I feel like maybe the Cardinals, maybe that's not exactly y'all aren't really looking for identity. I feel like so much as maybe a set pace setting kind of game. How do you see this game, and how do you think those pieces and the way that the organizations approached it will play into this game?
Well, I mean, the short answer is trap game. That's how I see this game. We need to not fall into it. But you're right. We're at two different phases. They're rebuilding, new coach, new staff, new culture. They're losing older players and they're bringing in younger players. Derek Carr retires. Looks like we're going to go against Spencer Rattler, who comes from the same college program, basically, that Kyler comes from. Actually, I think it's identical to what Kyler comes from. And so there will be some interesting things there. But yeah, they're at a very different point than we are. As for what I'd like to see from the game, one of the things I'd like to see is actually a guy step up and be one of the leaders on defense. And it's a guy that I didn't mention it earlier on in the additions in the offseason. It's Josh Sweat. I certainly didn't forget that we brought him in, but I kind of want him to come in and be the dangerous guy on defense. Now, I'm not really expecting him to be a 15 to 20 sack guy this year. That's just not what he is. But he is. Yeah. I want to hear his name a lot, and not in the bad ways, obviously. But stuffs at the line for Alvin Kamara, pressures on Spencer Rattler, contain, making it so that he can't run out and things like that. I want to hear his name in those contexts and being a leader and consistent and those kind of things. But in more broad strokes, this is a game where it's kind of the opposite of the game we watched last night. Sorry, where it looks like we're the team that should win. And we got this team that's punching up, and we need to not overlook them. We need to not trip over our own feet and, with a whole bunch of nasty penalties and spitting on the opponent's quarterbacks and things like this, and just stupid things. Don't stupid yourself into a loss. And that's something. Now, I do think that there's a bigger divide between the Cardinals and the Saints than even the perceived divide. Maybe not in Las Vegas, but like in a lot of places where the divide between Philly and Dallas was not as great as the one between the Cardinals and the Saints right this second. So we need to make sure that we don't lose the game as much as them take it from us. So, I'd love to see us keep the penalties under 7. I know it's week 1. And there's going to be jitters and getting used to real game speed and all that, but I'd love to keep the penalties down a little bit.
Yeah, with your returning group, especially on offense, it's like I agree with you that week 1 there's some things that are getting worked out, but with so much of that returning, I think it lends itself to that idea that you really shouldn't have tons of penalties because they know each other. Like you know what I mean? The thing you're working on is not cohesion. You have cohesion. It's more timing and fine tuning things. That makes a lot of sense. So if there's like a particular group or a particular unit on the field coming into this game that you feel like is going to make or break the game for the Cardinals, like, hey, if this group doesn't show up, like we've been talking some about the defensive line in particular, right? You've got some new parts of that. Maybe it's them, or is there a particular unit or part of the Cardinals organization you think is going to make or break this game, or you want to see the greatest impact out of them?
So there's kind of two answers there. One would be the offensive line. Again, we are bringing back a lot of the same guys. It's all the same guys except for right guard, and he'll be present. In fact, the right guard we have actually played most of last year because our original went down. Anyway, the point is that it's a loud place. We're playing in New Orleans. The Dome is notorious for being loud. They're going to try to knock us off, false starts and things like that. Let's avoid those. So, but again, the cohesion while it may not help everything I hope it helps, it should help with communication between the quarterback and the offensive line. But the group I think could really set us apart in this game is our secondary. We have some young players on our secondary. We have Max Melton on one side going into his second year. We've got Will Johnson on the other side, the rookie we just brought in from second round this year, who's kind of seen generally as a first round talent that has some lingering health concerns that could last into the further portions of his career. Everyone loves our safety rooms with Garrett Williams, Jalen Thompson, and Budda Baker.
Yeah.
That's a group that could set us apart with a quarterback that's a bit volatile, like Spencer Rattler. So I think that could be what really sets us apart in this game. Combine that with a better pressure package that we could hopefully have up front. That's the thing that could really break this game wide open. It's not so much that our offense needs to put up 40 points. If our defense can turn over the other team 2 or 3 times, which I don't think is crazy, that can be what really cracks this game open and just gives us more of a dominating win rather than just a marginal win. So that's kind of where I'd love to see.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Now, same idea, but on the New Orleans side, is there a particular person, like when we talked about Dallas yesterday before the game, and I was like Saquon Barkley, and it's so obvious, I think, with the Eagles that he is the dynamic. If you can control it, you at least give yourself a shot. How do you view New Orleans in that sense? Is if you were to say, hey, here's the it factor that I think is the key for them for success that we need to be managing or controlling or have a real game plan for. What do you feel like that is?
Ultimately, it's probably their offensive line. I think that we're going to try. Last year, we got a lot of pressure through exotic looks and bringing in safeties and bringing in middle linebackers and things like that. I think this year they want to get back to pressuring 4 and dropping 7 and getting pressures more that way, like what you see from the Eagles in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Like they were able to do that for most of the game. And that's where Jonathan Gannon comes from. So I think they want to get back to that. If that works, great. But if it doesn't, if their offensive line is able to keep pressure out pretty consistently and Spencer Rattler can just stand back there flat-footed and pick us apart, I don't know that I have that kind of confidence in our secondary. And guys like Chris Olave might really have a, he might eat well that day. And then you can't really overlook Alvin Kamara. He's getting older. He's not what he used to be and all that, but he is still a really good player in both ways. Like he can run, he gets the ball in little screens and dump offs and things like that. So he's dangerous and he can manufacture some first downs that you really weren't wanting to give up. So as for one player, that's kind of tough. I guess Alvin Kamara is still the guy. But the matchup between, I'm guessing primarily Chris Olave and Will Johnson might be the big one in the secondary. So we'll see how that goes. But Alvin Kamara is kind of the biggest name to keep track of. And I think whatever he's got left, he's definitely going to have in week 1.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. He ate up Dallas when we played them last year. I feel like early in the season, he had a lot to give. As tends to happen, he slowed down a step towards the end of the season for sure. So I know you just said that this is a trap game potentially for, the Arizona's got to really watch out for that. If you had to guesstimate what you think a reasonable, score differential would be at the end of this game, where do you kind of see or expect that to be, assuming they don't fall directly into the trap?
Honestly, similar to last night, right? I think part of Philly's problem that they ran into, and I know Philly won, but part of their problem was 2 of their best weapons got negated very well by 2 of your best defensive players. Yeah. For reference, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith got not shut down, but very much so brought down to mediocre, basically, by Diggs and Bland. Similarly, but on a more broad scale, I feel like we counter a lot of the things that the Saints want to do and the things that the Saints might do fairly well. I feel like we counter. Last year, they were terrible against the run. They were like the second or third worst team in the NFL. Well, look at that. We're one of the best teams in the NFL at running the football. So if nothing else, just run the ball. I wouldn't be shocked if we had 2 running backs close to 100 yards. Maybe after 100, they pull, James Conner, and they put in Trey Benson for a good portion of the remainder.
Should be good.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at those kinds of things. And so, it's actually hard for me in this one. It won't be hard for the whole year, that's for sure. But it's hard for me in this one to paint a picture where the Saints win, which worries me, of course, as a Cardinals fan immediately. But yeah.
You see them putting their foot down and like, hey, they're going to try to be up 21 points, or like, hey, like you were saying, once we get ahead, we'll just kind of take our foot off, let some of the younger guys work on cohesion, all that sort of stuff.
I think that if we win, let's say the ending score, and I wouldn't be shocked, is like 30-17, right?
Yeah.
I think that 23 of those points or 24 of those points would be scored within the first half plus like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And then the rest would just be running rather, we're trying to kill the clock from early in the early in the third quarter, which is all the second half. So I would see something like that. It is something that they have done in the past when we've been up. They take their foot off the gas. I think we're set up to do that. This game does not scare me in that particular way, but we'll see.
I know it's funny, right? It always feels like fateful words to say. I think we both feel that way as we head into any matchup where it looks a little lopsided. So, well, I'm really excited. Sunday's got so many good matchups. I'm really looking forward to getting to watch part of this one and many others, hopefully. But I think this is good. I'm excited for the Cardinals and what they're going to do this season. Be good to get off on the right foot with I don't want to say an easy win, but a win against New Orleans to start it off. With that, we're for all the fans we already have, thank you for subscribing. We are still working our way towards 100 subscribers. So anyone who is able or willing to subscribe, we really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who already has. With that, we'll see everyone next time.